Dad's not going to make it anyway. Those weren't tears of grief dropping into the silence of my ICU room. They were cold calculations spoken by the daughter I raised just before her hand wrapped around my life support. Guided by the terrifying reality of inspiration number 1, I lay trapped in a paralyzed body, eyes glued shut, but hearing razor sharp, forced to listen as she decided my life was worth less than her inheritance. Before I tell you how I turned her greed into her prison sentence, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because you need to witness this confession. She thought she was ending her problems by pulling that tube, but she didn't know I would survive to make her pay for every second of air she stole from me. Let me take you back to the moment the world went black, and I became a ghost in my own skin. I knew that voice. It was the voice that used to ask for bedtime stories. The voice that screamed when she fell off her bike at 6 years old. Jessica, my daughter, the little girl I had raised alone after the cancer took her mother. Then came a heavier sound, the shifting of boots, the smell of cologne, vanilla and musk, too sweet, too strong for a hospital room. Mark, my son-in-law. Is he out? Mark whispered. The sound was like dry leaves scraping together. The doctor said he's unresponsive, Jessica answered. Her voice trembled, but not with the grief I expected. It trembled with fear. He's a vegetable, babe. He's gone. I am right here, I screamed inside my head. The words burned in my throat, but my lips didn't twitch. My tongue was a dead weight. I am right here. For 32 years. I worked as a perfusionist. I ran the heart-lung bypass machines during surgery. I was the guy who kept the blood flowing when the heart stopped. I knew the rhythm of life better than anyone. I knew the sound of a pump pushing oxygen. Click. Hiss. Pause. The ventilator beside me breathed for me. It was a cruel irony. I had spent a lifetime controlling these machines, and now I was a prisoner to one. Mark moved closer. I could feel his body heat near the bed rail. We need to talk about the bills, he said. His voice was low, urgent. $15,000 a day, Jessica. That's what this ICU costs. I looked it up. I know, she whispered. That's your inheritance burning up. Mark pressed. Every hour he breathes, that's hundreds of dollars gone. The house, the savings, it's all disappearing into this machine. My heart slammed against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. Inheritance. That's what I was to them now. I wasn't a father. I wasn't the man who taught her to drive, or paid for her wedding. I was a bank account with a pulse. Mark, he's my dad, Jessica said, but her protest was weak. It lacked conviction. I know, Mark soothed her. But if the machine stops, he goes peacefully. No pain. Just sleep. Peacefully? My mind raced. He didn't mean peacefully. He meant cheaply. He wouldn't want to be a burden, Mark whispered. You know how proud he is. He wouldn't want to leave you with nothing. A long silence stretched out. The air in the room felt thin, charged with a terrible energy. Click. Hiss. I focused every ounce of my will on my right index finger. Move, I commanded. Just a twitch. Just a tremor. Show them you are here. Nothing. The connection between my brain and my body was severed. I was a ghost in my own skin. Do it, Mark whispered. The sweetness was gone from his voice. It was hard now, commanding. Quick, before Nurse Maria comes back from her break. I can't, Jessica stammered. Do you want to lose the house? The money? Do you want us to be broke forever? Jessica let out a shaky breath. I could hear tears in it, but they weren't for me. They were for herself. Okay, she whispered. I felt a hand on my face. It was small, soft. It was a hand I had held 1,000 times. I remembered that hand reaching for mine when she was a toddler crossing the street. I remembered placing a diamond ring on that hand before she walked down the aisle. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered. Her fingers didn't stroke my cheek. They wrapped around the plastic tube taped to my mouth. No, I thought. Not you. Anyone but you. She pulled. The plastic slid against my windpipe. It was a wet, sickening sensation, like a snake being dragged from a hole. The seal broke. Then, silence. The machine stopped pushing air. The rhythmic hiss vanished. My lungs seized. My chest heaved, trying to pull in oxygen that wasn't there. I tried to gasp. I tried to thrash. I wanted to sit up and roar, but I remained perfectly, terrifyingly still. The panic was instant, primal. It wasn't just fear. It was biology screaming for survival. I was drowning in dry air. My chest burned as if it were filled with hot coals. My vision, even behind closed lids, began to spark with red and purple flashes. They are killing me. Beep, 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 beep. The cardiac monitor exploded into noise. The high-pitched alarm sliced through the room. "Oh God," Jessica sobbed, the sound rising to a wail. "Oh God, what did I do?" "Sheesh," Mark hissed. "Stand back, act surprised." The hallway door burst open. Rubber shoes squeaked violently against the floor. Code blue, get the crash cart. Room 304. It was Nurse Maria. I recognized her accent, sharp and efficient. Suddenly, hands were on me. Strong, professional hands. No pulse. Starting compressions. A heavy weight slammed into my chest. Crack. Pain shot through me. Sharp, electric, agonizing. My ribs fractured under the pressure. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever felt. It was real. It was life. "The tube is out," Nurse Maria shouted, her voice tight with confusion. "Doctor, the tube is out. It just fell out," Mark yelled from the corner. "We were just standing here. It just slid out." "Tubes don't fall out," a deep voice boomed. "Dr. Evans. I knew him. He was a good man. Reintubating now. Give me the laryngoscope." Metal clicked against my teeth. Plastic jammed back down my throat, rough and hurried. Then whoosh, air rushed in. Cool, sweet, impossible oxygen filled my burning lungs. My chest heaved. Thump, 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 thump. The darkness behind my eyes swirled, but the sparks faded. I was alive. "Doctor," Nurse Maria whispered. Her voice was close to my ear, low so the others wouldn't hear. I saw her hand. She was pulling it back when I came in. "I know," Dr. Evans replied, his voice a grim rumble. "Get security. Pull the hallway footage. Now." I lay there, tears finally leaking from the corners of my closed eyes, sliding into my ears. My daughter tried to kill me. She chose money over my life, and she failed. 7 days later, I stood on my front porch, but I didn't feel like I was coming home. I felt like I was entering a crime scene. I leaned heavily on aluminum crutches, the metal digging into my armpits. My left side was weak, a lingering souvenir from the hypoxia, the lack of oxygen. My face sagged slightly on one side, and my speech was thick like I had a mouthful of cotton. 2490 Maple Drive. I had bought this house 38 years ago. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every draft in the windows. It was my sanctuary. It was where I built a life with Linda. Now, looking at the dark wood of the front door, it felt like a trap. The shadows under the porch roof seemed longer than usual, stretching out to grab my ankles. "Welcome back, Dad," Jessica said. She unlocked the door and smiled. It was a terrifyingly normal smile. It was the smile of a daughter bringing her sick father home for soup and rest. It wasn't the smile of a woman who had squeezed a plastic tube until her father's lungs stopped. "We set up the guest room," she said, her voice bright and cheery. "No stairs. It'll be easier for you." Mark stood in the doorway, blocking the sun. He looked like a sentry. "Look at you, champ," he said. He reached out and patted my shoulder. I flinched. My body reacted before my brain could stop it. A sharp recoil, like touching a hot stove. Mark noticed. His eyes, usually dull, narrowed into slits. The smile didn't leave his face, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Jumped a little there, Thomas. Nerves?" I forced my jaw to relax. I had to play the part. I had to be the broken, confused old man they wanted me to be. "Just tired," I slurred, letting my head droop. "Head spins." "Let's get you inside," Mark said. He took my arm. His grip was firm. Too firm. It wasn't support. It was restraint. I settled into the guest bed. My old quilt was there, smelling of lavender and dust. The walls were painted the same soft yellow Linda had chosen 10 years ago. But the door was open, and Mark was standing in the hallway, watching. "I'll take your phone, Dad," Jessica said. She held out her hand. "I need it," I said. My voice was raspy. "For time. Clock." Dr. Evans said no screens, she lied smoothly. "Brain rest. You need total quiet to heal that noggin of yours. But, no arguing." She snatched the phone from the nightstand. She zipped it into her purse. The sound of the zipper was final. Zidge, zip, like a body bag closing. "I'll handle your messages," she said. "You just heal." She took my lifeline. She took my connection to the outside world. She walked out, and for the first time in 38 years, I felt like a stranger in my own house. I was isolated. A single island in a rising sea. 3 days passed in a blur of gray light and silence. I spent my hours staring out the guest room window. It faced the street. I watched the leaves move. I watched cars pass. I analyzed the flow of traffic like I used to analyze blood flow. Traffic heavy, pressure building, traffic light, pressure dropping. Then I saw him, Frank Carter. He lived across the street, a retired cop with knees that clicked when he walked and eyes that didn't miss a thing. He was out in his yard, pruning his prize-winning roses. Snip, snip. He attacked the bushes with a grim precision. He paused, wiping sweat from his forehead with a rag. He looked up at my house. He looked right at my window. I raised my hand. It was heavy, trembling, but I managed to press my palm against the glass. Frank froze. He stared at my hand. Then, very slowly, he nodded. Once, he didn't wave back. He didn't smile. He just nodded. He knew. Cops have a sixth sense for trouble, and my house was radiating it. I heard whispering coming from the kitchen. This old house had a quirk. The ventilation ducts were metal, installed in the 50s. They carried sound like tin can telephones. If you stood in the right spot in the guest room near the vent, you could hear everything in the kitchen. I shuffled to the vent and leaned my head against the wall. The bank account, Mark's voice drifted through the grate. He sounded angry. He's suspicious, Jessica whispered back. He keeps asking for his phone. We need the signature, Jess. The sharks are calling me. Forge it, Mark snapped. I can't. The bank manager knows his handwriting. Mrs. Anderson has known him for 20 years. Then practice, Mark hissed. We don't have time. Forge it. My stomach churned, a sour mix of acid and fear. They weren't just waiting for me to die anymore. They were actively draining me dry while I was still breathing. The door handle turned. I scrambled back to the bed, throwing the covers over my legs just as Jessica walked in. She held a white paper bag. Got your meds, Dad? She was smiling again. The mask was back on. But then I saw it. Hanging on her shoulder was a bag. Brown leather. The gold LV logo interlocking in a pattern I had seen in magazines. Louis Vuitton. It was brand new. The leather was stiff, the hardware shining. Nice bag, I said, keeping my voice low and thick. She froze. Her hand went to the strap, clutching it protectively. Oh, this? It was Mom's. I found it in the attic. Thought I'd use it to feel close to her. Liar. The word echoed in my skull. Linda never owned a designer bag in her life. She shopped at Target. She clipped coupons. She thought spending more than $60 on a purse was a sin. Mom didn't have a Louis Vuitton, I said, testing her. Jessica laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound that grated on my ears. Your memory is messy, Dad. The stroke. Dr. Evans warned us you'd get confused about the past. She tapped her temple with a manicured finger. Things are jumbled up in there. Gaslighting. She looked me in the eye and erased her mother's history. She insulted Linda's frugality, Linda's values, all to cover her theft. She set the pills down and walked out. The bag swung on her hip. $6,500. Maybe more. My money. I had to know. I waited. I lay in the dark listening to the house settle. I heard the back door slide open, then the murmur of voices in the backyard. The smell of cigarette smoke drifted in through the window. They were outside. Now, I grabbed my crutches. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. Pain shot through my hip, hot and sharp. I gritted my teeth and pushed myself up. Move, Thomas. Move. Every step was agony. My weak legs shook violently under my weight. The rubber tips of the crutches whispered against the carpet. Thump. Step. Thump. Step. I made it to the kitchen. It felt like I had run a marathon. I was sweating, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I went straight to the trash can. I lifted the lid. The smell of stale coffee and rotting fruit hit me. I didn't care. I dug my hand in. Coffee grounds, eggshells, a sticky yogurt container. There, buried at the bottom, crumpled into a tight ball. A receipt. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. I smoothed it out on the counter, wiping away a smear of tomato sauce. Louis Vuitton Boutique Chicago date, yesterday. Amount, $90,000. Card ending, 4738. My debit card. The card connected to my retirement account, $9,200 for a bag. While I was supposedly dying, I heard the back door handle turn. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I shoved the receipt into the pocket of my pajama pants. I couldn't get back to the room in time. I was trapped. I leaned against the counter, grabbing a glass from the drying rack. I turned on the faucet, pretending to fill it. Mark walked in. He brought the smell of smoke with him. He stopped dead when he saw me. "You shouldn't be up, Thomas." His voice wasn't loud. It was low, threatening. It was the low rumble of a dog before it bites. "Just thirsty," I said, raising the glass. My hand trembled, spilling water down my chin. Needed water. He walked over to me. He moved with a predatory grace. He took the glass from my hand and set it on the counter with a hard clack. "Let me help you, buddy," he said. He gripped my arm. His fingers dug into my bicep, pressing hard against the bone. It hurt. It was meant to hurt. "You need to rest," he whispered. Leaning close, I could smell the stale tobacco and that sickly sweet vanilla cologne. "We don't want you falling. We don't want another accident." He emphasized the word accident. He stared at me, his eyes dead and flat. He was telling me, without saying a word, that accidents could differ. Some happen, some are made. "Stay put," he said, steering me forcefully back toward the bedroom. I limped along, his fingers bruising my arm. I touched the crumpled paper in my pocket. I had proof, but now I knew something else. They weren't just thieves. They were desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. 2 days later, the house was quiet, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a held breath. I sat in the recliner, listening. The garage door rumbled open, then ground shut. The engine of Jessica's car faded down the street. She was going to the grocery store. Mark was at work, though I suspected his work involved a slot machine. I was alone. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my crutches and hauled myself up. My hip joint screamed a hot wire of pain running down my leg, but I ignored it. I had to get to the dining room hutch. That's where the laptop lived. I moved as fast as my broken body allowed. Swing, step, swing, step. The rubber tips of the crutches slipped slightly on the hardwood. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the refrigerator humming. I reached the dining room. It was dusty. They hadn't cleaned in here. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight, cutting through the curtains. I pulled the laptop from the drawer. It was cold to the touch. I opened it, and the screen flickered to life. Chase Bank. I typed in my username, then the password, Linda, 1985. Access denied. I stared at the red letters. They had changed it. Of course they had. They had locked me out of my own life. "Think, Thomas," I whispered. "Think like a mechanic. If a valve is stuck, you bypass it." I clicked forgot password. Send verification code to recovery email. I held my breath. If the code went to my phone, the phone Jessica had in her purse, I was dead. But if it went to my old Yahoo account, I pulled my tablet from the magazine rack next to me. Jessica had forgotten about the tablet. It was old, cracked, and slow, but it was connected to the Wi-Fi. Ping. The email appeared on the tablet. My hands shook as I typed the code into the laptop. 49221. Enter new password. I typed Survivor 2024. Enter new password. I typed Survivor 2024. Enter new password. I typed Survivor 2024. The dashboard loaded. The numbers appeared on the screen. I stopped breathing. The air left my lungs, and for a second I felt like I was back on that hospital bed, suffocating. Current balance 28. 2 months ago. That number was $150,000. It was the money from the sale of the cabin. It was the money for my long-term care. It was the money intended to help Jessica when I was gone. It was gone now. I felt sick. Not angry, sick. A deep physical nausea roiled in my gut. It was gone now. I felt sick. Not angry, sick. A deep physical nausea roiled in my gut. I had spent 32 years watching blood levels on monitors. I knew what a hemorrhage looked like. This was a financial hemorrhage. I was bleeding out. I clicked transaction history. It wasn't a list of expenses. It was a slaughter. BMW of Chicago, $26,000. Down payment. Nordstrom, $2,800. Best Buy, $4,100. Cash withdrawal, $5,500. Then I saw the names. They repeated over and over like a drumbeat of disaster. Grand Victoria Casino, $50. Grand Victoria Casino, $500. Grand Victoria Casino, $900. Rivers Casino, $1,500. Grand Victoria Casino, $900. Rivers Casino, $1,500. Harrah's Casino, $3,500. I scrolled down. The screen was a wall of gambling charges. Mark, he wasn't just greedy. He wasn't just an opportunist. He was an addict. He was chasing a high with the money I had broken my back to earn. Then, the transfers. Transfer to Mark Johnson. $7,500. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the mouse. They were erasing me. Dollar by dollar, they were scrubbing my existence away. Ricking Douyi. The landline on the desk screamed. I jumped, my heart hammering. I stared at it. Who calls a landline anymore? Telemarketers? I picked it up. Hello? Mr. Miller? A woman's voice, soft, nervous. Yes, this is Mrs. Anderson. From the branch, Chase Bank. I exhaled. Mrs. Anderson? She was the branch manager. She used to give Jessica lollipops when she was 5. She tapped her pen on the desk when she was anxious. I could almost hear the tapping now. Mrs. Anderson, I whispered. I was just looking at the account. Thomas. I shouldn't be calling, Mrs. Anderson whispered. Her voice was hurried. But your son-in-law was here yesterday. My grip tightened on the phone. Mark? He tried to add himself to the deed of your house. The room seemed to tilt. The floor dropped out from under me. The house? I choked out. Did you let him? No, Mrs. Anderson said. The signature on the form, it looked traced, Thomas. It was shaky. I told him our notary was out to lunch. I stalled him. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Thank God. Thomas. She paused. I heard a sharp intake of breath. He was aggressive. When I said no, he slammed his hand on the desk. He told me you were mentally incompetent. He said you didn't know what day it was. I'm not, I said, my voice hardening. I know exactly what day it is. It's the day I catch them. I flagged the account, Mrs. Anderson said. But be careful, Thomas. He looked desperate. I know. Thank you. I hung up. The front door opened. I froze. I hadn't heard the car. Dad? Jessica. Her voice drifted down the hall. I didn't move. I sat there at the dining table, the laptop open, the screen glowing like an accusation. She walked in carrying grocery bags. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes went to the laptop. What are you doing? Her voice pitched up. Dr. Evans said no screens. Checking my balance, I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. I turned the laptop screen toward her. $120,000. Jessica. Where is it? She went pale, the blood drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. She dropped the grocery bags. A jar of salsa shattered on the floor. Crash. Red sauce splattered across the hardwood like blood. Dad, you're confused, she stammered. She took a step back. I see the casino charges, I said, pointing at the screen. I see the BMW. I see the cash withdrawals. Those are medical expenses, she cried. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit, looking for an excuse. A BMW is a medical expense. I asked. Slot machines are therapy? She started to cry. It wasn't the soft crying of a child. It was the ugly, gasping sobbing of someone who had been caught. He told me he'd pay it back, she wailed. He has a system, Dad. He just needed a stake. He's gambling my life away, I said. And you're letting him. Heavy boots hit the floor behind her. Mark walked in. He must have been in the garage. He saw the shattered salsa. He saw Jessica crying. He saw the laptop. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed. He walked over to the table. He moved with a heavy, dangerous confidence. That's enough, he said. You're stealing from me. I said, looking him in the eye. I spoke to Mrs. Anderson. You tried to steal the house. Mark didn't blink. He reached out and slammed the laptop shut. Wham! We're taking care of you, he shouted. The sudden volume made me flinch. You're ungrateful. That's what you are. You're a sick, confused old man. I'm not confused, I said. He grabbed the laptop. He ripped the power cord out of the wall. No more screens, he spat. You're losing your mind. Paranoia. Dr. Evans warned us about this. Give that back, I demanded, trying to stand. He pushed me. It wasn't a hard shove, just a stiff arm to my chest. But in my condition, it was enough. I fell back into the chair, the air rushing out of me. You're sick, Thomas, Mark said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. And sick people don't need computers. They need rest. He tucked the laptop under his arm. Come on, babe, he said to Jessica. Jessica looked at me, her face wet with tears. Then she looked at Mark. She lowered her head. She followed him. They walked out, leaving me sitting in the silence, staring at the puddle of red salsa on the floor. I had the truth. But now they knew that I knew. The game had changed. It wasn't a secret anymore. It was a war. 2 days later, I was sitting in the recliner, staring at a patch of peeling paint on the ceiling. It looked like a map of an unknown country. Mark walked in. He was wearing a floral shirt, bright red hibiscus flowers on a blue background. It was festive. It was loud. It was wrong. "We're going to Hawaii," Jessica announced from the hallway. She wouldn't come into the room. She stood near the doorframe, hovering like a ghost. I turned my head slowly. "What?" "Anniversary trip," Mark said, buttoning his shirt. He checked his reflection in the mirror over the mantel. He smiled at himself. "We need a break. This whole ordeal, it's been stressful for everyone." "Stressful?" I whispered. "You're leaving me? Alone?" "You have food," Jessica said, her voice tight. "The fridge is stocked. I put sandwich meat on the bottom shelf so you can reach it. You have your pills." "Mark booked it," she added quickly, as if that explained everything. "Non-refundable, first class." "First class," I repeated. "With my money." "It's our money, Thomas," Mark said, turning to face me. His eyes were cold despite the cheerful shirt. "Family money. And you're not using it." Jessica walked past the doorway, dragging a suitcase. It wasn't just any suitcase. It was brown leather with gold monograms. It matched the purse, a Louis Vuitton rolling luggage set, another $4,000. "Easily. The neighbors will check on you," Jessica lied. I knew she hadn't told a soul. "Don't do this," I said. "If I fall—" "Don't fall," Mark said. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. "Just sit here, watch TV, be a good boy." He patted my cheek. It was a light tap, but it felt like a slap. "See ya, buddy," he smirked. Jessica didn't say goodbye. She didn't look back. She just walked out the front door, the expensive wheels of her suitcase humming on the hardwood. Click. The lock turned. Then the deadbolt. Thud. I heard the car start. I heard it back out of the driveway. I heard it drive away. I was alone. Day 1 passed in a silence so deep it hurt my ears. I slept in the chair. I didn't want to move. Day 2. The morning sun hit the window, hot and unforgiving. My mouth felt like it was filled with sand. I needed water. I looked at the kitchen. It was only 20 feet away. It might as well have been 20 miles. "You can do this, Thomas," I whispered. My voice was a dry croak. "You ran bypass machines for 12-hour surgeries. You can walk to the kitchen." I grabbed the crutches. I pushed myself up. My legs shook. My muscles were atrophied, wasted away from weeks of lying in bed. Step. Swing. Step. I made it to the hallway. I was sweating. My heart was fluttering, an irregular rhythm, arrhythmia. My brain diagnosed. Stress-induced. I reached the kitchen tile. There was a drop of water on the floor, maybe from the ice maker, maybe from the leak under the sink I had been meaning to fix for 6 months. I didn't see it. The rubber tip of my right crutch hit the wet spot. It didn't grip. It slid. "No!" I shouted. My weight shifted. The crutch flew out from under me. I tried to catch myself with my bad leg, but it buckled like a straw. I went down. Crash. I hit the floor hard. My hip, the one that was already weak, slammed into the ceramic tile. A sound echoed through my body. Crack. It wasn't a loud noise, but I felt it. A sickening vibration that traveled up my spine. "Ah!" I screamed. The pain was white hot. It blinded me. It radiated from my hip down to my knee and up into my stomach. I curled into a ball, gasping for air. "Help!" I yelled. "Somebody!" The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the microwave blinked 10:14 a.m. Nobody answered. I couldn't get up. I tried. I pushed with my arms, but the pain in my hip was so intense it made me vomit bile onto the floor. I lay back, panting. 20 minutes passed, then an hour. The cold from the tile began to seep into my bones. It started in my shoulder, then my back. It was a creeping numbness. Hypothermia, my medical brain whispered. In an elderly patient, lying on a cold surface can lower core body temperature rapidly. Organ failure will follow. I was going to die here. I was going to die next to the dishwasher, in a puddle of my own sick, while my daughter drank my tayas in Maui. I looked at the floor level. I saw dust bunnies under the cabinets. I saw a lost button. I saw my life from the perspective of a discarded object. I am not trash, I thought fiercely. I am Thomas Miller. A shadow passed the window. I turned my head. The movement made the room spin, but I focused. Frank. He was walking to his mailbox. Help, I yelled. It came out as a whisper. I tried again. Help? He didn't hear me. The glass was thick. The house was sealed tight. He was turning away. He was walking back to his house. Do something? My shoe. I was wearing a heavy orthopedic sneaker. I lifted my good leg. It took every ounce of energy I had left. I slammed my heel against the cabinet door. Thump. Frank stopped. He looked around. I did it again. Thump. Thump. Frank turned. He looked at the kitchen window. Thump. He couldn't see me on the floor, but he could see that the room was empty. He knew I couldn't walk. He walked up the driveway. He cupped his hands around his eyes and peered into the glass. I raised my hand. Just my hand. I waved it frantically from the floor. His eyes went wide. He didn't ring the doorbell. Frank Carter, retired sergeant, ran to the back door. He tried the handle. Locked. Hang on, Thomas, he shouted through the glass. He stepped back. He lifted his heavy work boot. Kick. The wood splintered. Kick. The door flew open, crashing against the wall. He ran in. He smelled like fertilizer and Old Spice. To me, it was the best smell in the world. I got you, he said. His voice was rough with panic. I got you, buddy. He knelt down. He didn't care about the vomit. He didn't care about the mess. He lifted me. He was strong, surprisingly strong for an old man. He carried me like a child to the living room couch. I'm calling 911, he said, pulling out his flip phone. No, I grabbed his wrist. My grip was weak, but my eyes were pleading. Thomas, your hip might be broken. You need a hospital. No police, I rasped. Not yet. Why? They left you to rot, Thomas. This is criminal neglect. If the police come, they get arrested, I whispered. And if they get arrested, they get a lawyer. They stay silent. I took a ragged breath. I need them to talk. I need them to hang themselves. Then who? Frank asked. Who do I call? Call the cavalry, I said. Call Bill. Frank nodded. He understood. He handed me my tablet from the side table. My hands shook, but I opened my email. To billmiller@gmail.com. Subject, emergency. I typed with one finger. They left me. I fell. Come now. Bring the boys. I hit send. Then the adrenaline faded. The pain took over. The black edges of my vision closed in. I passed out, but for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. My brother was coming, and Bill didn't play by the rules. I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and rage. I'm going to kill him. I swear to God. Susan, I'm going to put him in the ground. The voice was a low growl, vibrating with a violence I rarely heard. Uncle Bill, my younger brother. We need to be smart, Bill. Lower your voice. Aunt Susan. Her voice was the counterweight. Calm, steady, but tight with its own anger. I forced my eyes open. The living room was dim. Someone had closed the blinds to block the harsh afternoon sun. Bill stood by the window, peering through a crack in the curtains. His fists were clenched at his sides, knuckles white. He looked like a bull ready to charge. You're awake, Susan said softly. She was sitting in the chair next to the couch, holding a damp washcloth. She leaned forward and wiped my forehead. Her eyes were red. Her eyes were red. Where are they? I croaked. My throat felt like sandpaper. Hawaii, Bill spat. He didn't turn around. I checked the flight logs. They checked into the Four Seasons in Maui 4 hours ago. Living it up while you were lying on the floor. He turned then. His face was a map of fury. Frank told us everything, Tom. How you looked. The bruise on your hip. The empty fridge. We called David, Susan said, squeezing my hand. He's flying in. He lands at midnight. The hours passed in a haze of pain management and silent waiting. Bill paced the floor, checking the driveway every 10 minutes. Susan made tea and broth, feeding me small spoonfuls. At 12:45 a.m., a rental car's headlights swept across the living room wall. The front door opened. David walked in. My son. He looked 5 years older than the last time I saw him. His shirt was rumpled, his eyes dark with exhaustion. He dropped his duffel bag by the door. Thud, he saw me on the couch, the bruise spreading across my face. My leg propped up on pillows. Dad, he breathed. He crossed the room in 2 strides and fell to his knees beside the couch. He was careful not to touch my hip, but he buried his face in my shoulder. I'm sorry, he whispered. His voice broke. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have been here. I should have seen it. You're here now, I whispered, resting my hand on his head. His hair was thinning, just like mine used to. I believed her, David said, lifting his head. Tears streaked his face. Jessica told me you were deteriorating. She said you were violent. She said I shouldn't visit because it upset you. She lied. I said, she wanted me isolated. I know that now, David said. The grief in his eyes hardened into something colder, something like steel. And I'm going to make sure they never hurt you again. We need a plan, David said. We were gathered in the living room like a council of war. Bill sat on the arm of the chair. Susan stood by the kitchen. David paced. We can't just call the cops, David said. Not yet. Why the hell not? Bill demanded. Assault? Neglect? Theft? It's a laundry list, David. It's he said, she said, David countered. They have a narrative. They've been planting seeds for weeks. They told the doctors. Dad is confused. They told the bank he's senile. If we call the cops now, Mark will say Dad fell because he's old and clumsy. He'll say the money was a gift. He forged the signature, I said, and he'll claim you asked him to sign it because your hands shake. David said. He's a manipulator, Dad. He's been planning this. We need something undeniable. We need a confession, I said, or we need to catch them in the act. Exactly, David said. Bill stood up. He walked over to his travel bag. I thought you might say that. He pulled out a small cardboard box. Hidden cameras, Bill said. Motion activated. High definition. Cloud recording. They upload instantly to a server he can't touch. He opened the box. They were tiny black cubes, no bigger than a die. I brought 3, Bill said. Where do we put them? 1 in the kitchen, I said. That's where they argue about money. 1 in the living room, David added. Covering the desk where the laptop is. And 1 in your room, Tom, Bill said grimly. Just in case. They went to work. Bill was a contractor. He knew how to hide things. He placed 1 inside the housing of the old grandfather clock in the hall. It looked through the glass face, invisible among the gears. He placed another on top of the kitchen cabinets, nestled in a fake fern Jessica had bought years ago. The 3rd one went on my bookshelf, hidden inside the spine of a hollowed-out medical textbook. Now we wait, David said, checking the feed on his phone. The images were crisp and clear. I'll stay at Bill's house, David announced. What? I asked. No, you just got here. If I'm here, they clam up, David explained. They'll play the perfect couple. They'll be on their best behavior. But if you're alone, they'll get comfortable. They'll get sloppy. It's dangerous, Susan said, her voice trembling. They already tried to kill him once. David, you're leaving him as bait. The room went silent. The word hung in the air. Bait. That's what I was. A wounded animal left out in the open to draw out the predators. I looked at my son. I saw the fear in his eyes, but also the resolve. He didn't want to do this, but he knew it was the only way to end it permanently. I can do it, I said. Dad, David started. I can do it, I repeated firmer this time. I spent my life in operating rooms, dealing with life and death. I can handle Mark. We'll be listening, Bill said. We'll be parked down the street. The second. I see a threat. I'm coming through that door. Okay, David said. He squeezed my shoulder. We catch them. Then we bury them. They left before dawn. Bill fixed the back door temporarily so it would lock, but left the damage visible enough that I could blame it on a clumsy fall if asked. I was alone again. But this time, I wasn't helpless. I looked at the grandfather clock. I looked at the fern. I looked at the bookshelf. The house was wired. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for the monsters to come home. They came back on a Tuesday afternoon. I heard the car doors slam before they even reached the porch. I was sitting in the recliner, a blanket pulled up to my chin to hide the trembling in my hands. I had practiced my expression in the mirror for an hour, slack-jawed, vacant, tired. The front door swung open. Aloha, Mark shouted. The sound was like a gunshot in a library. He stood there, framed by the sunlight, wearing a fresh lei of purple orchids and a grin that showed too many teeth. He was tan, a deep, bronze color that spoke of long days by a pool. Jessica trailed behind him. She looked different, thinner. Her tan didn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the way she chewed on her lower lip. "Hey, Dad," she said softly. She held out a box. "We brought you chocolates, macadamia nuts." "How is it?" I asked, letting my words drag and slur. I stared at the wall, not at them. "Amazing," Jessica gushed, but her voice cracked. "Just really relaxing. We needed it." She didn't ask about the bruise on my hip. She didn't ask why the milk in the fridge had spoiled or why there was a faint smell of vomit lingering near the kitchen tiles. She didn't want to know. "Look at you," Mark said, dropping the suitcases. Thump. "Survived without us just fine, didn't you, old-timer?" He walked over and ruffled my hair. I forced myself not to bite his hand. "A little hungry," I mumbled. "We'll order pizza," Mark said, checking his watch. He seemed agitated, bouncing, on the balls of his feet. "I need to check the mail. Did any letters come?" "Dunno," I said. "Memory? Bad." Mark's eyes narrowed, scanning the room. He looked at the grandfather clock. He looked at the bookshelf. He looked right at the fern on the cabinet. My heart stopped.
Did she see the lens?
"Place smells like old people," he muttered, turning away. "I'm going to shower." That night, the house felt different. Before, it was a prison. Now, it was a stage. I lay in bed in the dark, my breathing shallow. I wasn't sleeping. I was working. I had the tablet under my covers, the brightness turned all the way down. I had logged into the camera feed. I put one earbud in, leaving the other ear open to the room. On the screen, the living room was bathed in the grainy gray light of night vision. Mark was pacing, back and forth, like a tiger in a cage that was too small. Jessica was sitting on the sofa, her head in her hands. "The sharks called again," Mark whispered. The microphone in the grandfather clock picked it up clearly. His voice was tight, vibrating with panic. "I thought you said the trip would fix it." Jessica whispered back. "You said you'd win it back, at the tables in Maui." "I had a bad run," Mark hissed. He stopped pacing and leaned over her. "They want the money by Friday, Jess. 65,000. Or they start breaking legs. My legs. Your legs." "We don't have it," she cried softly. "We spent the cash withdrawal. The credit cards are maxed." "The house," Mark said. He looked around the room, as if calculating the square footage. "We need the equity. If we sell, we clear 550 grand easily." "He won't sign, Mark. He knows." "He saw the laptop! He's a vegetable!" Mark snapped. "He forgot about the laptop 5 minutes after I took it. He thinks I'm his best friend. He's not a vegetable, he's my dad." Jessica stood up, "And I can't force him to sign a deed." "Then we finish it." The silence that followed was heavy. It pressed down on the house like a physical weight. On my tablet screen, I saw Jessica freeze. "What do you mean?" Mark reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small glass vial and a syringe. "Insulin," he said. "He's not diabetic," Jessica whispered. She backed away from him. "Exactly," Mark said. "A high dose causes hypoglycemia. His blood sugar drops to 0. He goes into a coma. His heart stops. In an old man with a history of stroke? It looks like natural causes. A heart attack." "No," Jessica sobbed. She shook her head violently. "No, Mark, I can't. The tube is one thing. I just wanted it to be over. But this is murder." Mark grabbed her shoulders. He shook her. "It's him or me, Jess. These guys aren't banks. They don't send letters. They send guys with baseball bats. Do you want to be a widow? Do you want to lose the house anyway when they sue us?" Jessica was crying harder now, her body shaking. "He's suffering, babe," Mark lied. His voice turned soft, manipulative. "Look at him. He can't walk. He can't talk. He's miserable. We're setting him free." I watched my daughter. I watched the little girl I had carried on my shoulders. I watched the woman I had walked down the aisle. I waited for her to slap him. I waited for her to run to my room and call the police. "Okay," she whispered. It was the quietest sound in the world, but it shattered my heart into a million pieces. "Do it," she said, turning her back. "Just make it quick." I took the earbud out. I didn't feel fear anymore. That part of me had burned away when she said, okay. Now there was only cold, hard resolve. I switched apps on the tablet. I opened my messages. To David. They're coming. Tonight. Insulin. I watched the screen. Delivered. 3 seconds later. Read. I slid the tablet under the mattress. I arranged my pillows. I slowed my breathing. I closed my eyes. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the bait. And the trap was about to snap shut. 2 hours a.m. The witching hour. In the hospital, this was when the dying usually gave up. The sun was too far away, and the darkness was too heavy to hold up anymore. I lay in bed, my body arranged in a perfect imitation of deep sleep. My mouth was slightly open. My breathing was rhythmic. A slow, rasping inhale, followed by a heavy exhale. In, out, inside. My mind was racing at 1,000 miles an hour. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat that I prayed they couldn't hear. Control, I told myself. You are a perfusionist. You control the flow. Lower the pressure. I focused on the shadows, stretching across the ceiling. The moonlight filtered through the blinds, painting stripes of silver and black on the walls. It looked like the bars of a cell. I heard it. The floorboard in the hallway, the one that always squeaked when the humidity was high. Squeak, they were here. The door handle turned. Slowly, so slowly that if I hadn't been waiting for it, I wouldn't have seen the brass knob rotate. Click, the latch slid back. The door pushed open. I kept my eyes closed, leaving only the tiniest slit open. Just enough to see movement, but not enough to reflect the light. Mark stepped into the room. He wasn't wearing shoes. He was in his socks, moving like a ghost. He was still wearing the floral shirt from the afternoon, but the festivity was gone. In the moonlight, the red flowers looked black. He held his right hand down by his leg, a glint of metal, the syringe. He crept toward the bed. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like the man who had grilled burgers at my 4th of July party. He looked like the man who had toasted me at his wedding. That was the scariest part, the normalcy of evil. He stopped at the bedside. He loomed over me, blocking out the moonlight. I could hear his breathing. It was fast, shallow. He was terrified, but he was committed. He raised the needle. He aimed for my arm, where the vein was prominent. This is it, I thought. The machine stops here. He lowered the needle, inch by inch. Crash. The sound was apocalyptic. The front door of the house didn't just open. It exploded inward. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. Police. Federal agents. Nobody move. The shout shook the walls. Mark froze. The needle hovered 3 inches from my skin. His eyes went wide, reflecting pure animal panic. He turned toward the door. Freeze! David burst into the bedroom. He wasn't the tired son who had arrived last night. He was a missile. He didn't yell. He didn't hesitate. He launched himself across the room. He hit Mark at full speed. Thud. They crashed into the dresser. The lamp flew off and shattered. Mark screamed. A high, pathetic sound. The syringe flew from his hand, spinning through the air like a silver dart. It landed on the carpet near the closet. Get off me. Mark shrieked. I didn't do anything. Stay down. David roared. He had Mark pinned to the floor, his knee pressed into Mark's back. Don't you move a muscle. The room filled with uniformed officers. Flashlights cut through the darkness, blinding and chaotic. Secure the room, someone shouted. A tall man in a trench coat walked in. He moved calmly through the chaos. He didn't run. He didn't shout. Detective Cole. I saw his badge glinting on his belt. He was with the Elder Abuse Unit. He looked like a man who had seen too much darkness to be surprised by it anymore. He looked at me. Miller, are you injured? I sat up. I dropped the act. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I'm alive, I said. My voice was steady. Cole looked at the floor. He pulled a pen from his pocket and pointed at the syringe lying on the rug. Bag it. Cole barked to a technician. That's attempted murder. Class A felony. It's not mine, Mark yelled, his face pressed into the carpet. He's a diabetic. It's his. I have the medical records, Mark, I said into the silence. I'm not diabetic. And my fingerprints won't be on that plunger. Mark stopped struggling.
He went limp.
He knew. From the hallway, a wail pierced the air. Daddy, no, don't let them take me. Jessica. 2 officers dragged Mark out first. He didn't look at me. He stared at the floor, his face pale and sweaty. Then they brought Jessica. Her hands were cuffed behind her back. She was wearing silk pajamas. Her face was a mask of running mascara and snot. Dad, she screamed when she saw me. She tried to pull away from the officer, lunging toward the bed. Dad, tell them I didn't know. David stood next to me. He reached for the bedroom door to close it. Don't, I said. Dad, you don't need to see this, David said gently. Open it, I commanded. Let her see me. David stepped back. Jessica stood in the doorway, held by a female officer. She looked at me. She looked for the soft father who used to sneak her extra cookies. She looked for the man who paid her tuition and fixed her flat tires. He made me do it, she sobbed. I was scared, he said. We'd lose everything. I looked at her. I didn't see my daughter. I saw a stranger. I saw a woman who had watched her husband fill a syringe with poison and said, Okay, Daddy, please, she begged. I'm sorry. I sat perfectly still. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't point a finger. I just watched. I watched with the cold, clinical detachment of a surgeon finding a tumor that was too far gone to save. Get them out of here, Detective Cole said. The officer pulled her away. Her screams faded down the hallway, out the front door, and into the night. I stood up. I didn't need the crutches. Adrenaline was holding me up. I walked to the front window. The front lawn was lit up like a carnival. Red and blue lights strobed against the oak trees. Neighbors were standing on their porches and bathrobes, watching the show. They shoved Mark into the back of a cruiser. They put Jessica in another. Across the street, standing in the shadow of his haze bushes, was Frank. He was leaning on a shovel. He saw me in the window. He didn't wait. He stood up straight. He raised his hand to his brow. A salute, one soldier to another. I put my hand on the cold glass. The condensation wet my palm. My daughter was gone. My money was gone. My innocence was gone. But as the police cruisers pulled away, taking the poison out of my life, I took a deep breath. My chest expanded. My lungs filled. It was the first breath of fresh air I'd taken in months. 3 months later, the courtroom didn't smell like justice. It smelled of lemon floor wax and old wood. It smelled of sweat and anxiety. I sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table. I wasn't using the crutches anymore, but I had a cane, a sturdy piece of hickory that tapped against the floor. Tap, tap. It was my new rhythm. Next to me sat Mr. Harrison. He was our lawyer, a man who treated the law like a math equation. He took off his wire-rimmed glasses and polished them with a microfiber cloth. Rub, rub, inspect. You ready, Thomas? He asked softly. He didn't look at me. He looked at the lens of his glasses. I just want it over. Mr. Harrison, I said, the video is damning. Mr. Harrison said, putting his glasses back on. It's not just evidence. It's a confession in 4K resolution. Across the aisle, at the defense table, they sat. Mark wore a suit that didn't fit him too tight in the shoulders. He looked smaller without his bravado. He looked like a cornered rat. Jessica sat next to him. She wore a gray cardigan. Her hair was pulled back. She looked young, vulnerable. It was a costume designed to make the jury see a confused girl instead of a woman who agreed to murder. She wouldn't look at me. She stared at her hands, twisting a ring that wasn't there anymore. The prosecution calls for Exhibit C, the district attorney announced. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. A large screen descended from the ceiling. I closed my eyes. I didn't need to watch it. I had lived it. But the jury watched. 12 strangers. A teacher. A mechanic. A retired nurse. Leaned forward. On the screen, the grainy night vision footage played. The courtroom was so silent you could hear the air conditioning hum. It sounded like the ventilator from the hospital. Hum. On screen. Mark paced. It's him or me, Jess. Then the moment that sucked the air out of the room. Jessica's voice, clear and amplified by the speakers. Okay. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a sob. It was a business transaction, an agreement to trade a father's life for a house in the suburbs. I heard a gasp from the jury box. The retired nurse covered her mouth. She looked from the screen to Jessica with pure horror. It wasn't the violence that shocked them. It was the betrayal. It was the unnatural coldness of a child ending a parent. Mr. Miller, please take the stand. I walked up the 3 steps. My hip ached, a dull throb that reminded me of the kitchen floor. I sat down. The wood was hard. The defense attorney tried to be gentle. He knew attacking a victim in a wheelchair was political suicide. Mr. Miller, he said, you love your daughter, don't you? It was a trap. If I said yes, I was forgiving her. If I said no, I was a monster. I looked at Jessica. She finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, pleading. She wanted me to save her. She wanted me to be the dad who fixed things. I looked back at the lawyer. I loved the girl I raised, I said. My voice was steady, but my hands gripped the cane until my knuckles turned white. I loved the girl who scraped her knee and cried for me to hold her. I paused. The room held its breath. But that woman sitting there, etc.? I pointed a trembling finger at the defense table. I don't know her. The daughter I loved died the moment she reached for that breathing tube. Jessica put her head down on the table and sobbed. It wasn't acting this time. It was the sound of a bridge burning down. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. It was fast, too fast for hope. They filed back in. They didn't look at the defendants. That was the sign. Will the defendants please rise? Mark stood up. He was shaking. Jessica had to be helped up by her lawyer on the count of attempted murder in the 1st degree. The foreman read, we find the defendant, Mark Johnson, guilty. On the count of elder abuse causing great bodily injury, guilty. On the count of grand theft, guilty. Mark closed his eyes. His knees buckled. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, the foreman continued, turning his eyes to Jessica. We find the defendant, Jessica Johnson, guilty. The judge read the sentencing immediately. He didn't want to drag it out. Mark, 30 years. No parole for 20. Jessica, 15 years. 15 years. She would be 50 when she got out. Her youth, her potential, her life gone. All for a bank account. The bailiffs moved in. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed off the high ceiling. Click, click. They led Mark out first. He looked back at me. His eyes were full of hate. He mouthed something vile, but I didn't care. He was a ghost to me now. Then they took Jessica. She stopped at the railing. She was only 10 feet away from me. She looked small. The gray cardigan hung off her shoulders. I'm sorry, she mouthed. No sound came out, just the shape of the words. I looked at her. I thought about the hospital room. I thought about the hand on my face. I thought about the insulin needle. I didn't say it back. I didn't nod. I didn't wave. I turned my head and looked at the exit sign. The door swung shut behind her. Thud. I was alone in the courtroom. Mr. Harrison touched my arm. It's done, Thomas. Yes, I said, leaning on my cane to stand up. It's done. I walked down the center aisle. My limp was still there, but my head was up. I walked out into the sunlight. I sold 290 Maple Drive 2 weeks after the trial. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. The furniture was gone. The rugs were rolled up. The house echoed with the sound of my cane tapping against the hardwood. Tap, echo, tap, echo. I stood in the kitchen. The spot where I fell was clean now. The stain from the salsa was gone. The scratch marks from my desperate kicking on the cabinet door had been sanded down and painted over. It looked like a normal house. But I knew the ghosts were still there. I saw Jessica learning to bake cookies at the counter. I saw Mark leaning against the fridge, calculating my death. I saw myself lying on the tiles, freezing and alone. I didn't feel sad leaving it. I felt like I was escaping a haunted ship. I walked out the front door and locked it. I dropped the keys in the realtor's lockbox. I didn't look back. I live in a condo now. It's on the 4th floor of a building downtown. It's modern. It has floor-to-ceiling windows, white walls, and steel appliances. It's cold, sterile, and bright. Most importantly, it has a doorman named James, who checks every ID. It has cameras in the hallways. It has deadbolts that require a keycard. It is a fortress of glass and light. It's quiet here. No creaking floorboards. No wind howling through old eaves. Just the distant hum of the city traffic below. Sometimes the silence is heavy. I sit in my leather chair and look at the view of the skyline. I drink my coffee. I watch the clouds move. I am lonely. I won't lie and say I'm not. The silence of a house with no family is a specific kind of deafening, but it is a safe silence. I don't sleep with one eye open anymore. I don't listen for footsteps in the hallway. I didn't want to hoard the money. The money was the poison that infected my family. It was the rot, so I put it to work. I started a foundation. The Miller Initiative. We fund legal defense for seniors. We hire lawyers to check wills, to audit bank accounts, to protect grandmothers and grandfathers from the people they trust the most. I go into the office 3 days a week. I sit across the desk from men and women who look just like me. Confused, hurt, betraying a deep shame that their own flesh and blood turned on them. I hold their hands. I look them in the eye. It's not your fault, I tell them. You didn't fail them. They failed you. It gives me a reason to wake up. It's my new heartbeat. I couldn't save my own daughter from her greed, but I can save someone else's father. Every morning I shave in front of a well-lit mirror. I tilt my chin up. There it is. A faint silver line on my throat. The scar from the intubation, the place where the tube sat. The place where Jessica's fingers wrapped around the plastic. I trace it with my thumb. I'm not whole. I never will be again. A part of me died on that hospital bed. A part of me died on the kitchen floor. I have a limp. My left hand still tremors when I'm tired. My heart still skips a beat when the phone rings unexpectedly. But I look at the reflection. The eyes staring back are older, sadder. But they are clear. They are awake. I walked out onto the balcony this evening. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and purple. I leaned on the railing. I closed my eyes. I took a breath. In. I felt the air fill my lungs. Deep, full, unobstructed. Out. I felt the air leave, carrying the tension of the day with it. It's a simple thing, a mechanical function. Gas exchange. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. I spent 32 years watching machines do it for other people. But now, it feels like a miracle. My daughter is in a cell 6 feet by 8 feet. My son-in-law is behind bars. I am standing under the open sky. I am breathing, and for the first time in a long time, I am free. And that is the end of Thomas's journey. He survived the betrayal, but he lost the people he loved most. He chose justice over family. So, I have to ask you, was this justice, or was it too harsh? Should a father forgive his child no matter what, or are there some lines that once crossed can never be uncrossed? If Thomas's fight for his life and his dignity resonated with you, honor his journey with a like. And to make sure you never miss a truth this powerful, subscribe and join us for the next story. Thanks for reading.